The face in your mirror is a lie. Behind those familiar eyes hides someone you've never truly met, your authentic self. Every decision you make, every relationship you form, every career you pursue might be serving a personality that isn't even yours. What's truly disturbing? Each morning as you prepare to face the world, you're not just applying makeup or fixing your hair. You're reconstructing an identity designed by others. Carl Jung uncovered this psychological horror, that most humans die as strangers to themselves. They execute scripts written by parents, culture, and childhood wounds so perfectly that they mistake the performance for reality. But in quiet moments of clarity, those 3 a.m. thoughts when sleep won't come, a terrifying question surfaces. Who am I beneath all this? The real tragedy isn't just living a counterfeit life. It's that deep down, your buried self is screaming to be discovered. Feel that persistent emptiness inside, that subtle wrongness following you everywhere? That's not random anxiety or meaningless depression. That's your authentic self gasping for air, suffocating beneath layers of conditioning you never consented to. And here's what Jung discovered. The longer you ignore this voice, the more destructive its attempts to reach you become, through relationships that inexplicably collapse, through sudden rages that seem to come from nowhere, through achievements that leave you hollow instead of fulfilled. The parts of your nature you've abandoned don't simply disappear. They grow more powerful in the unconscious, eventually hijacking your life through self-sabotage, inexplicable fears, or that creeping sensation that you've somehow betrayed yourself. This isn't self-improvement filtered for Instagram. This is psychological excavation, bloody, messy, and absolutely necessary if you want to stop living as a character in someone else's story. Jung's path demands what most people never give, the courage to shatter your own delusions. It's painful, even dangerous, but there's something beyond the fear. Authenticity so powerful, it makes your previous existence look like sleepwalking. While others spend their lives avoiding mirrors that might show their true reflection, you could experience the freedom that comes from finally, fully occupying your own life. Imagine discovering the house you've spent decades building, stands on property you don't own. The foundation, walls, decor, all meticulously chosen, yet none of it truly yours. This is precisely what Jung uncovered about human identity. From your first conscious moments, you inherit a blueprint for existence. Be successful, be likable, be normal. Not random expectations, but carefully engineered demands designed to make you functional while keeping your authentic impulses contained. Your parents reward certain behaviors and punish others. Teachers mold you towards societal values. Friends enforce unwritten rules about what's acceptable. Gradually, these external pressures construct what Jung called the persona, not just a mask you wear, but one that eventually wears you. Jung called this mask the persona, from the Latin word for theatrical mask. It's the character you play in the social world, and it exists for a reason. Without it, raw human interaction would be chaotic. But the persona becomes dangerous when you forget it's just a role. When you completely identify with this mask, you disconnect from your authentic self. Think about it. How many of your personal preferences are actually yours? Your career path, your relationship patterns, even your sense of humor. How much of this was genuinely chosen by you, and how much was programmed by external forces? Jung would argue that much less of your identity is self-created than you'd like to believe. The most insidious part, your persona feels completely natural. It doesn't feel like a mask at all. This is why most people react with confusion or anger when confronted with the possibility that they're living someone else's life. The ego, that part of you that maintains your sense of identity, will fight viciously to protect the illusion that you are exactly who you think you are. But deep down, in moments of quiet honesty, don't you sometimes wonder if you've been playing a part this whole time? Haven't you felt that disconnect between the person you present to the world and something deeper, more authentic, that rarely sees the light of day? That tension isn't a sign that something's wrong with you. According to Jung, it's the first signal that you're beginning to wake up. Lurking beneath the persona waits something far more disturbing, what Jung called the shadow. While your social mask showcases everything deemed acceptable, your shadow contains everything you've been taught to hide, even from yourself. Your unacknowledged rage, your forbidden desires, your capacity for selfishness, manipulation, or cruelty. Every quality that contradicts your conscious self-image gets exiled here. The shadow's power lies not in its contents, but in your denial of them. When you pretend these elements don't exist, you don't eliminate them. You surrender conscious control over their expression. This explains why the most vocal moralists often fall to the exact sins they condemn. Why perfect families harbor the darkest secrets. The shadow always finds expression, whether you choose the form or not. Jung discovered a psychological law as reliable as gravity. The more rigid your persona, the more volatile your shadow. The executive obsessed with control has gambling debts they can't explain. The public champion of family values maintains secret affairs. The wellness guru who preaches clean living battles private addictions. These aren't hypocrisies, they're compensations. When consciousness becomes too one-sided, the unconscious creates balance through eruption. Your shadow operates constantly, just beyond awareness. That disproportionate anger when someone questions your decisions. The jealousy that feels oddly personal when a friend succeeds. The mysterious compulsion to sabotage relationships as they deepen. These aren't character flaws or emotional glitches. They're shadow material leaking through the barricades of your conscious mind. But Jung's most revolutionary insight was this: your shadow isn't just darkness. It contains your greatest untapped potential. Many of your most valuable qualities were banished there because they threatened social acceptance. Your fierce creativity labeled as impracticality. Your emotional depth dismissed as weakness. Your ambitious drive condemned as selfishness. Your sensuality suppressed as inappropriate. Children who express too much enthusiasm get taught to be seen, not heard. A boy's natural empathy gets mocked as softness. A girl's leadership instinct gets labeled as bossiness. Over decades, these rejected gold coins of authentic personality accumulate in the shadow vault, leaving you with the paradox Jung identified, that what might fulfill you most has become what you most aggressively deny. Jung called the process of reclaiming these disowned parts individuation, the psychological journey toward wholeness. But understand this clearly: individuation isn't a weekend wellness retreat. It's a radical confrontation with everything you've spent your life avoiding. It demands courage most people never access. Individuation requires questioning your fundamental operating system, the core beliefs about who you are. It means looking unflinchingly at what you've labeled unacceptable, shameful, or frightening about yourself and asking, what truth am I refusing to see here? This is why Jung stated, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. The path to authenticity begins where comfort ends. The journey begins by recognizing your persona as exactly what it is, a social adaptation, not your essence. This means developing awareness of when you're performing versus when you're being authentic. Are you choosing careers based on status rather than calling? Do you silence opinions that might meet disapproval? Do you reflexively agree with group consensus while your inner voice dissents? This recognition creates profound disorientation. Your entire sense of self has been built on these patterns. Questioning them feels like the ground vanishing beneath you, which explains why most retreat into familiar masks the moment this vertigo hits. But psychological growth only happens at this edge where certainty dissolves. The anxiety triggered when questioning your identity isn't a warning. It's confirmation you finally located the door to authenticity. With the persona recognized, you face the real challenge, confronting your shadow. Jung's approach here was revolutionary. Rather than trying to eliminate your negative qualities, He advocated integrating them consciously. This doesn't mean indulging destructive impulses. It means acknowledging them, understanding their origins, and bringing them into the light of awareness where they transform rather than control you. How do you identify your shadow content? Look at what triggers disproportionate emotional reactions. What behaviors in others provoke your harshest judgment? Jung discovered a psychological principle. What evokes your strongest criticism in others typically reflects disowned aspects of yourself. The colleague whose ambition you condemn as ruthless might mirror ambition you've suppressed. The friend whose emotional expressiveness makes you uncomfortable might reflect vulnerability you've denied in yourself. Dreams offer another direct channel to shadow content. Pay attention to recurring figures or situations, especially those evoking powerful emotions. That character who frightens you or attracts you despite your conscious resistance. That's your shadow speaking through symbolic language. Jung discovered the unconscious continuously communicates through these dream messages, attempting to restore wholeness to your fragmented psyche. But the most revealing shadow signal appears in life patterns that stubbornly resist change. That relationship dynamic you keep recreating with different partners. That career ceiling you hit repeatedly despite different strategies. That financial self-sabotage that erases progress just as things improve. These aren't chance occurrences or bad luck. They're psychological feedback loops created by unintegrated shadow material. Until you face what's hidden, these patterns will continue recycling, impervious to conscious intentions or external changes. Beyond persona and shadow stands what Jung termed the self, not your ego identity, but the archetype of psychological totality. The self encompasses your entire psyche, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, in dynamic equilibrium. This is your authentic nature, not the simplified character you present socially, but the complete psychological system that constitutes who you are. Most never directly experience this integrated self. Instead, they mistake fragments, persona, ego, idealized self-image, for their complete identity. This is like confusing a single wave for the ocean itself. Your authentic nature vastly exceeds the narrow definitions you've accepted about who you are. Connecting with the self means expanding beyond these artificial boundaries into the fullness of your psychological reality. This is where Jung's groundbreaking concept of the collective unconscious becomes crucial. Jung discovered the human psyche isn't shaped solely by personal experience. It contains universal patterns he called archetypes. These primordial images and instinctual understandings appear across all cultures and time periods. The hero who faces trials, the caregiver who nurtures, the trickster who disrupts order, the sage who possesses wisdom. These archetypal energies emerge consistently in myths, dreams, art, and religious symbolism worldwide. These archetypal influences mold your personality at levels deeper than conscious choice. The particular archetypes dominant in your psyche shape your core values, attractions, fears, and sense of purpose. When disconnected from these fundamental energies, you experience a profound alienation, as if you're living someone else's narrative. Reconnecting with these universal patterns creates alignment with something transcending individual existence. Jung identified a psychological trap that ensnares many on this journey: spiritual bypassing. This occurs when people use spiritual concepts or practices to circumvent psychological wounds rather than heal them. They discuss transcending ego while their shadow remains completely unexamined. They adopt meditation practices but use them to escape inner conflict rather than engage it. They speak of oneness while avoiding the messy specificity of their unique psychological makeup. True spiritual development never involves escaping humanity. It requires embracing all of it, including aspects that contradict spiritual self-image. This explains why authentic individuation remains uncommon. Creating a new spiritual persona proves far easier than confronting the raw, contradictory truth of who you are. Jung emphasized, no transformation without confrontation. You cannot transcend what remains unacknowledged. The path to wholeness travels directly through your darkness, never around it. The journey towards psychological wholeness follows distinct phases Jung identified through his clinical work. The first confronts the persona, recognizing the social mask and beginning to separate authentic self from conditioned roles. This often erupts as midlife crisis when the constructed identity no longer provides fulfillment, forcing fundamental questions about identity and purpose. Next comes shadow confrontation, facing disowned parts of yourself and initiating integration. This phase presents the greatest challenge, requiring you to witness shame, fear, and culturally forbidden aspects of your nature. Many retreat here, unwilling to see themselves completely. Those continuing discover liberation as energy previously used for suppression becomes available for creative living. The journey continues with confronting what Jung termed the anima in men, or animus in women, unconscious contrasexual aspects of your psyche. In cultures with rigid gender expectations, qualities associated with the opposite gender often get suppressed. Men deny emotional sensitivity. Women subdue assertiveness. Both lose essential aspects of wholeness. Integrating these elements creates psychological completion beyond limited gender roles. Finally emerges the self, the experience of psychological totality transcending but including the ego. This doesn't eliminate the ego, but positions it appropriately within a larger system, no longer mistaking part for whole. When the self becomes the organizing center of personality, perspective fundamentally shifts. Identity expands beyond social roles or personal history into connection with deeper, more enduring aspects of being. Most will never complete this psychological odyssey. The demands exceed what most can tolerate. They will remain confined within their persona, occasionally disturbed by shadow eruptions they fail to understand. Their lives will consist of pursuing external achievements, status markers, or relationship validation, perpetually chasing fulfillment without realizing what they truly seek is their own wholeness. For those brave enough to walk this path, Jung promised not perfect happiness or freedom from suffering, but something rarer: authenticity. When you cease fighting against your own nature, when fragmented parts integrate into coherent wholeness, your relationship with existence fundamentally changes. You shift from reactive living driven by unconscious forces to creative expression of your unique psychological makeup. This is what Jung meant when writing. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who others expect, not who society rewards, but who you are in your complete, contradictory totality. This represents the ultimate psychological achievement, to live from your authentic center rather than from external expectations or unconscious compulsions. The question facing you now: will you continue wearing the mask even as it suffocates you? Or will you risk removing it, even when that feels like tearing off your own skin? Are you courageous enough to face what lies beneath the carefully constructed identity you've defended so fiercely? Most choose the comfort of familiar illusion over the pain of liberating truth. But if you're ready to begin this journey, what awaits isn't just self-knowledge. It's freedom to finally exist as who you already are. If you want to go deeper into understanding the hidden psychological forces controlling your life, subscribe to this channel. Every week, we decode the invisible mechanisms that shape your decisions, relationships, and perception of reality, often without your awareness. Challenge yourself. Rise above. Become who you already are. Let me know in the comments, which parts of your authentic self have you sacrificed at the altar of social acceptance? What would become possible if you reclaim them?